You open your phone. Within less than a second, your brain finds someone who seems to have it all. A better car, a stronger body, a happier life. And before you can even name the feeling, something inside you tightens. That quiet voice that whispers, "You're behind again." It doesn't matter how much you've achieved or how grateful you tried to be. One scroll and the peace you built in the morning is gone by noon. This is not weakness, it's not vanity, it's neurology. That sting in your chest when someone else wins is not imagined. It's a real pain signal triggered in the same part of the brain that responds to physical injury. Science can see it, lit up in red on an fMRI, the mark of comparison. We think we want happiness, but that's not what the brain evolved to chase. Your mind is not scanning the world for joy. It's scanning for rank. It's asking, where do I stand? Am I above or below? Because for millions of years, knowing your position in the tribe meant survival. And even now, in the digital tribe of billions, that same ancient code still fires. But here's the question that lingers. If you've tried to live simply, to let go of possessions and noise, yet your mind still aches every time you see someone ahead, then are you truly free? The answer, according to neuroscience, is no. Because your brain doesn't ask, am I happy? It asks, where do I rank? To understand why comparison feels so automatic, you have to look backward, far beyond childhood, beyond culture, beyond the modern world itself. For most of human history, people lived in small tribes, dozens, maybe 100. Everyone knew everyone, and survival depended on awareness, on knowing who led, who followed, who was respected, and who was ignored. In that world, comparison wasn't a flaw, it was strategy. It helped you decide who to imitate, who to trust, and when to stay quiet. It told you where you stood in the invisible order that kept the tribe alive. To lose rank meant risk. Fewer allies, fewer mates, fewer chances to eat. So the mind began tracking status as carefully as it tracked food or danger. Over generations, that habit became wiring. The brain learned to read social rank through tone, gesture, posture, and reward. It became a background program, running without your permission, asking one question again and again, am I safe here? And for thousands of years, that program worked. It kept people cautious, adaptive, and alive. But the environment it was built for, small, slow, human, doesn't exist anymore. The tribe became a city. The city became a planet. And the ancient radar, designed for a handful of familiar faces, now scans a digital crowd of billions. Every face on a screen becomes a signal. Every success story, every headline, every photo of someone smiling on a beach. Another data point for the algorithm to rank. Your brain, unable to tell real threat from symbolic one, reacts as if each post were happening inside your tribe. When someone rises, you feel the drop in status. When someone falls, you feel a faint lift. It's primitive math, not morality. That's why you can't outsmart it by decluttering your room or moving to the woods. You can delete the apps, change the scenery, live with less. But the radar keeps running. It will find new people to measure against. A neighbor, a friend, a stranger on a walk. Because the algorithm isn't in your phone, it's in your neurons. And the same instinct that once kept your ancestors alive now keeps you restless and quietly unsatisfied. If the ancient algorithm explains why we compare, neuroscience shows how it happens. Because comparison isn't just an idea. It's a chain of electrical events inside your brain. And when you see someone doing better than you, that chain fires almost instantly. 3 regions come alive together, like instruments in an orchestra. Each plays its own part in the emotion we call envy. The first is the ventral striatum, the brain's reward center. This is where the chemistry of pleasure lives. When you win, when you gain, when something goes your way, this area lights up with dopamine, the neurotransmitter that signals success. But here's the strange part. When someone else wins and you don't, activity in this same region drops. It's not just that you don't feel rewarded, you feel deprived, as if their gain subtracts from your worth. That's the root of envy, your reward circuit interpreting another person's victory as your loss. Next comes the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the DACC, and the insula. These are the regions that process social pain. They're the same areas that activate when you're physically hurt. So when you see someone rise above you, your brain doesn't treat it as a harmless observation. It treats it as a wound, a kind of social injury. You don't imagine that ache in your chest or the tension in your gut. Science can measure it. fMRI scans show that envy triggers the same neural pathways as physical pain. That's why comparison hurts even when nothing tangible has been taken from you. And then, deeper in the prefrontal cortex, another area begins to work, the medial prefrontal cortex, or MPFC. This is the seat of self-evaluation. It links what you see in others to what you believe about yourself. When someone's success enters your awareness, the MPFC runs the calculation. How does this reflect on me? Am I doing enough? Am I falling behind? If the answer feels like failure, the loop completes. The drop in reward, the surge of pain, the self-judgment, they reinforce one another. Now add dopamine to the mix. Dopamine isn't just the chemical of pleasure, it's the chemical of learning. Every spike teaches your brain what to chase, and every dip teaches it what to avoid. Each time you scroll and see someone ahead, you get a small drop. Moments later, a new post offers hope, a potential spike. So you scroll again. That's the loop. Pain, relief, pain. A perfect behavioral circuit for modern technology to exploit. Over time, this loop reshapes your baseline. The more you compare, the less you feel rewarded by your own progress. Your mind learns to link happiness not with achievement, but with ranking. And ranking never ends. That's why envy isn't a moral failure. It's a malfunctioning algorithm, a reflex that evolved for survival but now reacts to illusions. Screens, numbers, curated lives that your brain reads as real hierarchies. The pain isn't proof that you're broken, it's proof that you're human. But understanding it changes everything, because the moment you can name the mechanism, you stop being ruled by it. You start to see the pattern for what it is, a system of signals, not truth. And that knowledge, the awareness that envy is code, not character, is the first step toward freedom from it. If the brain evolved to compare, the modern world has learned how to weaponize that instinct, not by accident, but by design. Because once you understand what drives human behavior, the pull of dopamine, the pain of status loss, you can build entire economies around it, and we have. Social media didn't invent envy, it industrialized it. Every scroll, every like, every highlight reel feeds the ancient algorithm you inherited. Each post is a small experiment in emotional control. Can this image make you feel a little lower, a little hungrier, a little more compelled to act? And when it can, the system wins. Because what you call attention, the market calls profit. The more you compare, the longer you stay. The longer you stay, the more ads you see. The more ads you see, the more likely you are to buy. Not things you need, but things that promise to restore your rank. That is the quiet genius of the attention economy. It doesn't demand your belief, it only needs your reflex. Your brain's reward circuit, the ventral striatum that lights up for social rank, becomes a lever. A billion-dollar lever pulled by algorithms that understand you better than you understand yourself. This isn't just about phones, it's about culture. Status has become the currency that powers everything. Politics, marketing, even morality. Companies sell not products but identities. Politicians sell not solutions but tribes. Everyone is competing for position in a hierarchy that no one truly controls. And when comparison becomes currency, honesty dies. Because to stay visible, people curate, they perform. They craft an image that keeps them one rung higher than someone else. The result is a collective hallucination, an economy of illusions where no one feels enough, even at the top. That's the paradox of progress. The more advanced the tools, the more primitive the emotions they exploit. Our ancestors compared to survive, we compare to consume. The instinct hasn't changed, only the incentive has, but not everyone plays the game. 2,000 years ago, in a city obsessed with wealth and reputation, one man refused the rules. Diogenes walked through Athens barefoot, sleeping in a barrel, mocking the powerful with nothing but his mind. He had nothing, yet he was feared, because he couldn't be controlled. He couldn't be shamed. He had stepped outside the hierarchy entirely. What made him dangerous wasn't poverty, it was immunity. He had no rank to lose, and that made him untouchable. In a world built on comparison, that kind of freedom is revolutionary. The advertisers, the influencers, the systems that depend on your envy, none of them can reach a man who no longer measures himself by their metrics. So when you hear that still voice telling you to chase more success, more validation, more proof of worth, remember what's really happening. It's not your ambition speaking, it's the algorithm whispering through centuries of conditioning, asking for another hit of attention. If you don't understand this, you'll mistake exploitation for motivation. You'll keep running the same loop, calling it drive, calling it discipline, while your mind is being trained to crave the next comparison. But if you do understand it, you can stop playing. You can step back, watch the game, and see the strings being pulled. Because once you see the mechanism, the spell breaks. And when the spell breaks, envy loses its power. You begin to realize that the simplest form of rebellion in a world built on status is indifference. Not because you gave up, but because you finally saw through it. Every comparison begins as a spark, a brief chemical pulse in the brain. But when that spark repeats 1,000 times a day, it becomes a fire that burns quietly beneath everything you do. You chase one goal, then another, thinking satisfaction will follow. It doesn't, because the brain never stops recalibrating. Every time you reach something, the pleasure fades faster than before. This is called reward prediction error. Your mind adjusts the baseline, expecting more, demanding more, delivering less. So you run harder, you scroll more, you buy what's supposed to fix the feeling, but the treadmill moves with you. You never arrive. It's called the hedonic treadmill for a reason. You move, but you stay in the same place. And the faster you run, the more exhausted you become. Meanwhile, the cost isn't just emotional, it's biological. Constant comparison keeps your stress response active. Cortisol rises, dopamine spikes and crashes. Over time, this cycle dulls your natural sense of joy. The brain begins to need bigger rewards to feel normal. Ordinary moments, silence, rest, presence, no longer register as meaningful. And when that happens, you lose something deeper than peace. You lose the ability to feel yourself. Because the more your brain measures life by external metrics, the less it can detect its own internal signals. You forget what genuine satisfaction feels like, what achievement means when no one is watching, what pleasure is when it isn't displayed. This is the quiet hollowing of the modern man. He works harder than ever, but not for his own fulfillment, for the illusion of progress, for a sense of worth that can't survive without validation. He doesn't chase purpose. He chases equilibrium, just enough reward to offset the pain of comparison. That's why so many men feel restless, even in success, because they're not living by their own metrics anymore. Their nervous systems belong to someone else's scoreboard. And that loss of self is the true cost of comparison, not envy, not jealousy, but identity erosion. Each time you measure yourself against another, a small part of your agency fades. until one day you realize you haven't been living, you've been reacting. You don't need to be poor to feel empty. You only need to forget who defines enough. You don't lose because you have less. You lose because you let others decide the meaning of more. Freedom doesn't begin with detachment. It begins with understanding. You can't silence envy by pretending it isn't there. You can't outrun it by deleting apps or escaping the city, because the engine that fuels it is inside you, not around you. The brain compares because comparison once kept you alive. But survival and freedom are not the same thing. To be free now means learning how to update the code. The first step is awareness, not judgment, awareness. When you feel envy rise, don't label it as weakness. See it for what it is. A neural reflex, a tiny burst of chemical imbalance, something ancient, not personal. When you name it, you separate from it. You stop being the emotion and start observing the machine that produces it. That small shift, awareness over reaction, is the first act of rebellion. The second step is detox. You cannot expect a nervous system built for scarcity to handle infinite stimulation. Every alert, every comparison, every headline trains your dopamine loop to fire on command. To break the loop, you need silence. Real silence. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of metrics. Turn off the notifications. Unfollow the people who feed the reflex. Reshape your environment so your mind can remember what stillness feels like. At first, you'll feel withdrawal, the same unease an addict feels when the drug is gone. But stay there. Because what you call boredom at first is just the nervous system recalibrating. Then comes reappraisal. You can't delete comparison, but you can redefine what it means. When your brain says, "He's ahead of me," answer differently, then he's proof that it's possible. Shift from threat to information, from self-pity to curiosity. That's not optimism, it's neuroplasticity. Every reframe creates a new pathway. You're teaching the MPFC, the self-evaluating region, to stop confusing others' success with your failure. Next, give your brain a new source of reward. The striatum doesn't only respond to social validation. It lights up even more when you master a skill, finish something difficult, or experience flow. That's endogenous dopamine, the kind you produce yourself. Build it through practice, craft, discipline. Each repetition rewires the circuit that once depended on comparison. The reward becomes internal, and once your reward is internal, no algorithm can hijack it. But the deepest layer of freedom is philosophical. That's where science meets timeless truth. 2,000 years ago, Diogenes understood what neuroscience now confirms. The mind becomes unshakable when it no longer seeks rank. He wasn't a cynic out of despair. He was free because he stopped playing. He stripped away everything that made him comparable. And when there was nothing left to measure, there was nothing left to fear. You don't need to live in a barrel to understand that. You just need to see that the hierarchy exists only if you keep believing in it. When you stop, it collapses. Freedom, in the language of the nervous system, is low threat and high clarity. The amygdala quiets. The prefrontal cortex regains control. Your breath deepens. The constant scan for rank goes offline. You begin to sense something you may not have felt in years, a simple awareness of being. Not winning, not proving, not performing, just being. And from that place, life starts to change shape. You still work, but not to outshine anyone. You still achieve, but without the hidden desperation. You no longer ask, "How do I compare?" You ask, "Is this aligned?" That's what freedom sounds like when translated into biology. Not fireworks, silence, not excitement, presence. The nervous system returns to equilibrium. You are no longer ruled by the algorithm. You are running your own. It takes time. Some days the old reflex will return, whispering that you're behind again. That's fine. Freedom is not perfection. It's awareness repeated until it becomes instinct. One day you'll scroll and instead of pain, you'll feel nothing. Not because you're numb, but because you're free. Freedom isn't owning less. It's needing less, even inside your mind. That's what Diogenes discovered in the streets of Athens. And it's what neuroscience rediscovers in the lab today. To need less is not to lose ambition. It's to reclaim control over what drives it. Because once you stop chasing worth, you start living it. You've seen how comparison traps the mind, how it rewires the brain to chase ghosts, not goals. And maybe, for the first time, you understand that envy isn't moral, it's mechanical. But now comes the harder part. Because if envy is the symptom, dopamine is the system behind it. The same chemical that tells you what to want, when to move, who to be. The invisible current beneath every scroll, every purchase, every plan. You can't free yourself from comparison until you learn who's really pulling the strings. And that's not society, it's chemistry. So if you want to go deeper, if you want to see how the same molecule that built civilization has quietly enslaved the modern man, watch the next film, The Invisible Addiction That Rules Modern Men, Dopamine Slavery. It's not about quitting pleasure, it's about understanding why pleasure began to own you. Once you see that pattern, you'll never see your desires the same way again. Take a moment now, before you move to the next video, breathe. Feel the silence under the noise. That's your first real glimpse of freedom, and if you're ready to test it, write in the comments, I'll try. Try one day without comparison, one day of being present, not ranked. That's where change begins. If this made you see the world a little clearer, stay. Think deeper. This is ThinkMate,